Let's see if we hit 80% yet. So we're at 79 last I checked, last I updated. Let's see if we hit 80 on these things. If you didn't do your evals, do them. This page always crashes because, of course, it does. Something you be paid for. Why would it work? I don't know. It every time I go back to the tab, it just, it's not even letting me hit the button. Oh, maybe this. Yeah, maybe the image overrode. It's phenomenal. Like hey, 80%. Huzzah. All right, so all three of them are active. I'll update the Piazza post in a bit, but I don't want to, actually, I can do that during lecture today because that's part of what I want to talk about. So we have a kind of an extra day here where everything that I need to talk about is out there. Everything that I wanted to show is out there. So I'm just going to kind of do things with web apps. I have one solid idea, one concrete, I shouldn't say solid, but concrete idea. I'll go back to browser extensions and write a browser extension for Piazza to fix that thing that really irritates me about Piazza. I think it'd be a fun thing to do live and do a demo of. Plus, that's one of my favorite lectures of the whole semester is doing the, man, my brain today, is doing the browser extensions. So I think having another example of that could be pretty fun. But given the nature of these open-ended things, whatever y'all want to see, let me know. We'll kind of just freestyle, go open-ended, and talk about anything about web apps, because this is my last lecture. Monday starts presentations. So if you have any questions, of course, if you have any questions about last lecture, that lecture goes fast, and it's all about how to deploy your project. So any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer, go over any part of that again. And anything else, like anything that you're having trouble with, yeah.
Our project is not in such a way right now that rebuild the container or delete any user-posted images. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep, that's expected. If you rebuild the container, it wipes away your database. Yeah, because your database is one of your containers. So if you rebuild the database container, by definition, it's. Yeah, but that's inside your container. So if you rebuild the container, it's all gone.
Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how you do anything else besides using volumes, which I never talked about, so you're not expected to do that. Yeah, no, that's fully expected. If we do Docker Compose restart, all your stuff should still be there. It should be persistent, but it can't. Stuff inside the container can't persist through destroying the container and rebuilding a new container. It can't survive that. Yeah.
I actually have noticed, though, that databases survive with the force recreate command.
Your database does?
Yeah, a lot.
I wouldn't expect it to.
I don't know why, but it just works.
I don't know.
Update the code.
Yeah.
For some reason, the volume is still pulled into the database.
I don't know. I wouldn't expect it to, though. You don't have to have that feature. That is curious. I have to test with that sometime.
I think it is a separate volume in terms of Python database. I think it must be represented as a volume or something.
Yeah, it might notice that nothing actually changed, but it should. But we're getting off track. So the short answer to that is rebuilding the containers. They don't expect any data to persist. But Docker Compose restart, then I do. That's why the testing procedure is always Docker Compose restart, not rebuild. So if you do happen to have some persistent data through rebuild, it's actually strange. I wouldn't want that behavior from Docker. But Docker Compose restart, like your data should be persistent, of course, which is the whole point of using a database. I guess not the whole point, but you know what I mean. So any other questions on like homework and project stuff. Yes.
The Nginx part, I feel, went by a little fast on Wednesday when you were actually deploying it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you weren't showing that too much.
Yeah.
Is it just the implementation Monday?
So part of it, yeah, it did relate to Mondays. So I did go a little fast because I talked about it a little bit on Monday, but I can talk about it again, what specifically I did that was different from Monday, or just reviewing Monday too. I can talk about the whole thing. So cd, so I went into my configuration file, cd nginx, and that gives me all the configuration. Now for your homework, you're putting your configuration inside this confd directory, and then nginx is seeing that configuration file inside confd. That's the way we did it in, hopefully I still have it open. Where am I looking? Oh, that was the other one. Examples, we'll get there. So we set up this default conf file. I'll go back to that file, but we copied it into this etc nginx confd and then default conf. We named the file default conf. I'm going to jump around a little bit, so if it's a little confusing, slow me down and let me know. So in Nginx, the default directory structure for Nginx creates this etc nginx confd directory, which is by default empty.
And that's in the Docker?
And that will be inside the Docker container, the Nginx Docker container. So what we want to do is add a file to that directory, which is going to have our configuration in it. So if we look at the actual top-level configuration file, this nginx.conf, in the Nginx's root directory, this is going to have our actual, the configuration file that's read and ran and used by Nginx. This is the file. The two lines that we're really concerned about are these two right here. This file says, also run any configuration in etc nginx confd with an extension of conf. So we have default.conf, since it ends in .conf. That file is going to be read by Nginx because it's in its top-level configuration file. So we're going to add that configuration file to Nginx's basic configuration file, which is this thing. It also reads every file in the sites enabled directory. So in Wednesday's lecture, I went into the sites enabled directory. And of course, you could change these, but these are the defaults. I went into the sites enabled directory and added a new file there, and then added my configuration for my new site, for my new domain. And since this is, the star is the wild card for anybody missing that part. That's used, I assume you've all seen that before. You made it this far. So this is reading every file in the sites enabled directory and also adding those as configuration files, but also any conf file in the conf.d directory. So for your homework, I said, push this configuration file into the conf.d directory because Nginx is going to read all the conf files in that directory. So if you put your conf file there, you're going to be good. Nginx is going to read it, and you're going to be fine. So we copied it into that conf.d directory, a file, the default, you can name whatever you want, but it has to end in .conf because that's what's in the Nginx configuration file by default. It's going to read anything that ends in .conf in this directory. So we want to make sure our configuration file gets there somewhere where it's going to be read. We could copy this into sites enabled, that directory, and it would work the same way. And we also put our certificate in private key. You can put these anywhere you want, like seriously anywhere you want, as long as in default conf you're consistent. So I put them in etc nginx /cert and private key. Certbot put these in different locations, and I'll jump to that in a second. But all this configuration that I have for Nginx, listen on ports 80 and 443, 80 without encryption and 443 with encryption. The server name is localhost because we're not getting a domain name for the homework. And then here's where my certificate and private key are located. Tell Nginx where those things are and make sure these paths match where you copied those things into. So you're installing OpenSSH or OpenSSL, generating your certificate and private key, copying them into your container along with your configuration, and your configuration has to point to wherever you copied in that certificate and private key. And then the last step of this was saying whenever we get any request, location slash, like I could do location slash images and have a separate container hosting just my images and another container hosting the rest of my app. Like we can do fancy things like that. For our purposes, we're just going to redirect all traffic, everything that starts with slash, which is everything, to app, which matches what I named my app in Docker Compose. That's the host name for your app when communicating across containers created by Docker Compose. So forward everything using HTTP, because that's the only protocol your app speaks, aside from WebSockets. HTTP to my app, port 8000, whatever port you're running inside your container. So if you're in your container, you're running on 8080, you would change that to 8080, whatever you're running inside your container. What version of HTTP we're using, everything we've done, I said you can assume HTTP 1.1. You hard code that into the response line of your responses, status line of your responses. And then if you're using WebSockets, we forwarded these two headers. These headers won't automatically be forwarded by Nginx. So we manually forwarded the two upgrade and connection, the two WebSocket headers. For some reason, the sec WebSocket key, that is forwarded automatically. I don't know exactly why. I'm sure there's some reason. But these two you have to manually add to your configuration to make sure that those are there if you're using WebSockets. If you're not using WebSockets, you can just delete these two lines and everything's going to work fine. So that was the configuration for the homework, making sure you generate your key, insert, and copy them into your container, set up your Nginx configuration, and make sure that's copied into your container, have the right locations to where you copied the certificate and key inside your container, listen on 80 without encryption, 443 with, your host name is localhost, then redirect all traffic to your app's port, whatever you're running inside your container with HTTP version 1.1. That's the whole configuration for your homework, which I pretty much did for you. There shouldn't be an excuse to miss Objective 5 because you kind of just copy this. I mean, if this is different in your Docker file or you're using a different port inside your container, those are the two things that might change. You can change the file paths if you so desire, but most of this is just the same for everybody. I mean, some people are having trouble installing OpenSSL, I think, so maybe that would be one excuse, I guess. But so for the Wednesday, I get a broken pipe already. For Wednesday's demo, I did things a little bit different, not too much so. Nginx. Instead of using this conf.d directory, I use sites enabled. Since I'm running multiple sites, it makes more sense to me to go into the sites enabled directory and have all my configuration there for each one of my sites. It's the way Nginx intends it to be set up. Yeah?
So are each one of your sites being run on a different container, or are they all in that same container, and that's why you have that site enabled?
Different containers.
Oh, okay.
So
You're not in the container yet?
Nope. So all this is just on my DigitalOcean droplet, everything that I'm doing here. I'm not jumping into my containers and doing anything there. I probably should someday set up my Nginx to be in a separate container and have that not running just on my droplet, but I don't have it set up that way right now. So I have separate sites running, cc312.com, cc116.com. Jesse's always be watching. That's the site that I made last semester for the open, you all get to choose the domain name, cc442.com. Towers, which is running on jessehartloff.com. CSE 115 was just redirects to an old Piazza site, and the CSE 115 instructors felt like they didn't want to use that domain name, so they haven't updated the redirect to this semester's, but that's on them. That's up to them if they want to use it or not. But all those are running in separate containers, and then I have a configuration file in Nginx for each one that says, if the request is for this domain name, talk to this container. If it's for this domain name, talk to this container. Yeah?
What's the purpose of setting server name to localhost and the Nginx file corresponding to ticket file?
Because it'll be running on localhost, so if it gets any requests for the domain localhost, then it's going to forward it to that server.
So server name is always exactly the domain, or I'm kind of confused.
Yeah. There might be some caveat somewhere, but for my use case, it's always the host name, or domain name, rather. Yeah. So in my sites enabled, I have all these sites. And like if we take a look at the CSE 312 configuration, and another reason why I like sites enabled, it's a small thing, I guess, but I don't have to end all my file names in .conf, or I guess I could just update my Nginx configuration, but then I got to do that if I move things, I don't know. But I like my name just being the domain name. So for CSE 312, my server name is going to be the domain name cc312.com. So Nginx is going to see this and say, okay, whenever I get a request for CSE312.com as the domain name, because remember, it's the same IP address for all of these sites. So I can't just say, oh, I got a request and I'm this IP address, then it must be CSE312.com. CSE312.com, CSE116.com, several others, the ones I just mentioned, they all have the same IP address. It's all the same server, it's all the same droplet. So I need some way to differentiate between requests, and Nginx says, just tell me the domain name. I'll just check what domain name was used for this request, and I'll forward it to the appropriate whatever you tell me to do. So if I get a request for cc312.com on this IP address, I'm going to say, okay, forward, I don't care what it was. If it's a request for cse312.com/whatever, forward it to localhost, which localhost is just a name for 127.0.0.1. Send it to localhost port 8312, which 8312 I have mapping to port 5000 inside this container that's running the cc312.com app. So this is running cc312.com. I'm routing to 312, which maps to 5000. And you can see I'm using 5000 for a lot of these because I'm using Flask for these apps. Anytime you see 5000, I'm just using the default port for Flask. So inside the container, they're all 5000, but in Docker Compose, Docker Compose. In Docker Compose, I'm mapping whatever local port I want to use, which is going to match my Nginx configuration, to the, I already said it, to the port matching my Nginx configuration. So I'm going to forward to localhost 8312, because it's the number that made the most sense to me to run my 312 website on. I have these 3 lines, should look pretty familiar from the homework. I used to use WebSockets on the 312 website. I don't anymore, but I had these just in case. I always add these just so if I do add WebSockets and I'm not going to run into a bug and finally after hours of debugging realize, oh, I forgot to add those 2 lines in my Nginx configuration. And then everything else was generated by Certbot. So everything else was when I did Certbot or -b, I always forget. It's just Certbot -Nginx. When I ran that, Certbot did the rest of this, set up all the SSL, so I can have generated my keys, signed my cert, did all that stuff, set up the configuration files. And you can see that Let's Encrypt will create its own directory and store extra configuration for Certbot in separate directories. So we have extra Nginx configuration. We have extra the certificate, the private key, all in separate directories. Whereas for the homework, I said, let's just throw them in the Nginx directory, whatever. Certbot will keep that separate. Certbot, which installs Let's Encrypt certificates. Anything else while we're in here? So everything except running Certbot you have to do for your project. So if any of that was a miss, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about this hell for the whole time. I don't have to go into the... Man, my brain, it's the end of the semester. My brain's not working. Piazza to the Piazza browser extension. I'd be fine talking about Nginx, because this is related to something that you have to do. Oh, shit. Produce Pong demo. Thank you. Yeah, we got a Produce Pong demo to do. Oh, my goodness, I completely forgot. 3:35. Okay. Let me do, if there are no questions, let me do I can do this in 15 minutes, right? And then we can switch to Produce Pong at 3:35. My goodness, I can't believe I forgot about that. Okay. I planned on taking my time here. We gotta go. We gotta do this. Let's start with Netflix. We'll go Piazza. Piazza.com. So remember with Piazza private. Actually, let me talk about the use case, what we're actually doing right now. So I have Piazza. Test, submit, sure, test, submit. So it always displays your name. Even if you post anonymous, it's going to display your name to instructors on Piazza. So when I open Piazza during lecture, I have this pane that I go through where all the names are public when I don't want them to be and you don't want them to be. You want to be anonymous. If you post it anonymous, I want to respect that. But it'll just show the names anyway. And there's no option to not do that. There's an option over here. I can change this to student feed, but all it does is hide the private posts. I assumed that also hid names over here, and it doesn't, which is, I don't know. Like they're aware that we want that feature and just don't do it over here. So let's build this feature. So we're going to look in to the HTML. Where are we? I want to look into the HTML and see how these things are labeled, and it's going to be a span with data ID called contributors, and the other one should be as well. I believe that's consistent. Span with data ID equals contributors. So this, I want to look for something in this format. Oh, come on. Just let me select the whole thing. Oh, my goodness. So I want to look for something like this. Refactor, rename, Piazza, call Piazza. So remember in our manifest, we want to check like when to run this. I want to run this on any time I'm visiting Piazza. So I want to make sure this domain is fine. It looks like there's no www on Piazza. So I want to get rid of this www and just do piazza.com. So anytime I'm requesting piazza.com, I want to run this thing. There's no stars, right? That's a prefix. Autovote. Okay, I'm going to add a star because just to make sure. And then I want to remove anything that looks like this. Chromium might be hiding the www. It might be. Well, when we get there, we'll talk about it. if it breaks. We'll see this or not, if it's running or not. All right, so I want to get rid of this. For element, and the way I want to do this is I'm going to look at every span, because you saw me go into the console last time and just manually do this, so I've been thinking about how I want to set this up. I'm going to look for every span of document.getElement by tag name span. And then I want to check if lm dot attributes dot get named item, sure, data ID question mark equals contributors. Let's give this a try. And let's just print console.log lm.inner HTML. Let's just give this a try. Oops. Let's just give this a try. I'm going to go into the browser, into the console, and just run this and see what I get. And it's broken. So can't read value of null. Get named item data ID. So let's instead, let's just explore a little bit and see what we can learn. Console.log, because why not? I could run this in the debugger. I don't know if we need to go that far. Okay, so I want to say if, let me go back up to my old one. So if this exists and it equals contributors, then we want to print it out. Stephen Carter wants to be doxxed. And, well, that must mean you didn't post anonymously, though. So that's giving me all the elements that contain names, which is good for us. That's what we want to do. Paste this. Get rid of this old stuff. I don't need that no more. And instead of logging lm.inner HTML, why not just get rid of it? Hell, we can even replace it with redacted. So if I run this, let's just make sure that we get what we want. If we run this, we should see all those names disappear. Redacted, redacted, redacted. If I refresh, run, redacted, 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 redacted. Looks good. So every time there's somebody's name, it's redacted everywhere. That's what I want. Which means that means we're done, right? With time to spare. So manage extensions, I want to load unpacked. Document, Jesse Hartloff. Where do I go for this? PyCharm projects. Oops. It's the second time I did that this lecture. Web server from TCP, examples, Piazza extension. Select. Make Piazza private. Cool. So that's installed. We should be able to close this. Piazza breaks, because why wouldn't it? I promise it's not because I'm running extensions like that. And now I can go to Piazza and everything's redacted. Oh, except your symbols. But your icons won't show up if you're posting privately, right? I would hope not, right? So now I should be able to go to something like course incentive details. And we should be able to see these. Oh, swear to God. Is that really breaking because of my extension? Oh, crikey. Make Piazza private. Failed to execute remove child on node. Node to be removed is not a child of this node. Okay. You know, that does make sense. So it's trying to remove an element that I already removed, is what it looks like. Oh, how do I get around that? I got 3 minutes. I can do this, right? Let's go back to, we can do this. Let's go back to logging this. I just want to see what these things are. What the structure is of the things that I'm removing that Piazza doesn't want me removing. Let's do it this way again. Let's do it the way I do it for Netflix. And just remove the whole thing. Maybe this will work better. It's fantastic. Shut up. Okay, so that just completely removed them. I think this might not crash it. So if we go here, and just, oh, and refresh. Piazza, you absolutely kill me. Okay, now everything should be removed. No? Oh my God. Why? Why do you, Piazza, why do you hate me? I think I know what happened there. Is it worth fixing? Here, I'll do it this way. I mean, we got there, but I don't like the way we got there. I have to work on this. I'll have to work on that offline, because I do want this extension, because I'm so sick of doxing people on during lecture. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could just like wait a second for all of the stuff to load. I don't know if that matters.
So the problem is when I'm removing the nodes, like it's not dealing with nested comments very well. So I just run it a whole bunch of times, and that gets all the nesting. The other issue is that when a browser extension runs on load, and when I switch here, it's not reloading the page. It's not triggering my extension again. So I got two separate issues there that I got to fix. I'm aware of what they are, so I'll be able to do it. I just got to find some event that's triggered when you switch posts, and then tie into that event with an on whatever event, or just do the dumb thing and run it like every 100 milliseconds. But I'll work on that because I do want this to exist. I want this to be a thing. But you ready? All right, let's do Produce Pong. We're going to see a group project. This is from last semester, a group of TAs who are, most of whom are now, a group of students, most of whom are now TAs. And they'll show off their demo. Are you going to do it like the actual presentation, like show them what the structure should be? Are you planning to do that, or are you just going to show off the app? Okay, so we're just going to show off the app. But this would be one that would be, it's just going to be something fun we're going to watch. Because the structure of the projects changed as well. So this doesn't satisfy all the criteria for a game unless it accidentally does. It might accidentally, but. All right, but let me get out of your way because you don't have much time. Oh, my chair doesn't even have wheels.
All right. Does this work? Kind of. Okay. So hi, everybody. I'm Nicholas, and this is Sia. And we took 312 last semester, and we built the best game ever, Pulsar's Produce Pong. Now, our web server is kind of weak, so I'm going to request that nobody go to it during this demo, because it's probably going to slow it down a lot. But afterwards, you can check it out. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the page, because, oh, now we have a lav mic. That's good. But I'll let Sia talk a little bit about it, or she can navigate to the page and I'll talk about it. All right. So we got producepong.com, and it's a Pong game with grocery shopping, basically. So let's go ahead and create a new account. So you can hit play in the top right, and then we're able to log in or register here. So just go ahead and make something up, and we'll create a new account here. We can't have capital letters in the username because of reasons. It's a feature, yeah. Yes, it saves storage space by, yeah. Okay, so we got our new account here. And then if we go to the homepage by clicking Pulsar's Produce Pong, you can see we have a chat feature, and it lists all of the users that are logged in. We are going to be playing a game against Ruslana over there, so let's go ahead and jump into that. So the chat isn't implemented in the most coherent way, but it's functional. So go ahead and initiate a Pong game by clicking Play Pong. This will create a background game running in a separate thread with that very difficult to guess URL. So let's go ahead and join that one. And now you can see this incredible loading animation for a second there. That took me like 2 hours to make, but it was definitely worth it because everybody gets to see it. And now we are in a Produce Pong game between two people. So this does implement the lobby requirement on the current semester's 312 requirements for this project. And yeah, and then from that point on, it's just regular Pong, except if you scroll down, although we won't yet because they're playing, or now we will, you can see that it has all of the ingredients that each player won. So every round gets a new ingredient, and that's shown at the top of the page. And when you win a round, you win that ingredient. Now, the score doesn't actually matter all that much, but we did add the score just for it to be a little more full, like real Pong, right? So you can see it counts them. But the player with fewer points can actually win the game because it's determined on the quality of the dish that you make at the end, right? So as you earn these ingredients, they all have like kind of different values. And with the ingredients, you can create several different food items, and every food item is worth a different amount. So if you create a more extravagant dish, then you will win the game, even if you won fewer rounds of Pong. In terms of physics here, it'll speed up as the round progresses, of course, so that it doesn't get too stale. So regardless of the skill level of the players, it will eventually end the round because it just gets too fast to actually move the paddle. And all of this is calculated on the back end, so it's still hackable, but it's more difficult to hack than if you could just like set the position of the ball or your paddle right away on the front end. So all the game logic is on the back end, and it's pretty impressive that it's able to handle so many concurrent games. There are actually 2 other games. One of them I've had running since before this summer, and it's still running. I've got like 5 million points or something in that one, just purposely going forever. Maybe we'll take a look at that in a moment. But let's go ahead and let this game end, and then we'll be able to see the results screen and also some other features of the app that are less fun than the actual game part, but we'll show off the full thing because why not? So the game ends when both players are able to make a complete dish. So if you can get up to where like one player is totally destroying the other, if the lower score player doesn't have a complete dish, the game won't end. But here we go. So the game did end, and now it is loading the results page. And you can see that Ruslana won. So it shows which dish each player made, shows how many rounds they won, it shows all of the ingredients that they got, and there's also the timestamp for starting the game. And then we're able to go back and see previous games. So if you're on the homepage, you can click Spectate Games, and then this is the page I designed. You can tell by the wonderful CSS stuff. I don't think there's actually a CSS file on this page. Lots of effort into it, yes. But you can go ahead and click on one of the previous games or a currently running game. So here's mine, where I'm up to 5 million points. This has been running once again since before summer. So you can see I've got all of the ingredients, and I really have to find out which is the best dish in the game. Sia says I could just run a unit test to find out, but I say no. We must reach 10 million, and then we'll know what the best dish in the game is. And you can go back and see previous games that were played in the past, like when I destroyed Jesse, apparently, in this one. So that was cool, and you can go back, and that's all logged forever, so yeah. And then if we want to just go through some other features, we can take a look at the About page. So there's some ingredients previewing. You can hit randomize, and it will fetch those images from the server. And then you can see Contact, where it shows the full Team Pulsar, all 5 of us there, and we have the links to our GitHubs and also the Pulsar GitHub itself for the organization. Here's a profile page where you can change a profile picture. You can use one of the several random ones that Hannah designed, or you can upload your own. And once you win a round, or not a round, but a game by creating a certain dish, you'll earn that as an achievement. So over in the achievements, it'll show a picture of all of the dishes that you won a game by creating. And there's also a log out everywhere button if you want to invalidate all of your session cookies across all of your browsers. Like let's say you stayed logged in at a friend's house, you don't want them to have access to your Pulsar account, right? It's very important information stored here. So you can log out everywhere, and that will invalidate all of your session cookies everywhere. And of course, there's also the log out button in the top right, which just logs you out from this session and not everywhere. So you can still be logged in on like your phone. Although the game doesn't support touch controls, so you probably wouldn't have a fun time playing on your phone. But technically, if you attach a Bluetooth keyboard, you could. Any questions? Yeah, Jesse. How would you get the achievement for the worst dish? Technically, Sia wants to cover this one.
Technically, if you're super, super lucky, both you and your opponent could create that same dish, and then because it's a tie, it would be added to the achievements.
So every achievement is earnable. The worst one is the most rare one, yes. Any other questions? So in terms of technology, this is running on a Docker container in a DigitalOcean droplet in New York City. So there's a bit of latency, but it's not terrible. And we're using Flask and Flask sock. And honestly, the threading system that I designed is not very efficient at all. There are like 7 threads per game, which is pretty bad. But it's functional, and it's a pretty fun game to play, actually. I had a lot of fun making it. So, you know, if you all want to try it out and play against your friends, see who's the Produce Pong champion, you can definitely do that. Thank you. Oh, I bought the domain through Google Domains. And yeah, that's what Jesse used the other day as well. I like them the best. I've dealt with GoDaddy and Domain.com as well, and they've been very painful to deal with. They like to upcharge for everything, and they make it really painful to cancel. Google Domains has been very straightforward. I've canceled domains with them, no problem. Like, they're just like, you're sure you want to cancel? Yep, okay, cool, bye. Whereas Domain.com's like, we're not going to actually let you cancel the domain yet. You have to be like really sure, and then let us know again in a week that you want to cancel it. So yeah, that was a pain. So I like Google Domains for registering. I've also heard good things about Namecheap, so that's another option.
Google Domains has an auto-renew option, and it'll just charge you $12 a year. You have the domain forever.
Yeah, no, 12 isn't too bad. No. Produce Pong.